The Devil's Hole cave system in Death Valley National Park has become a locus for supernatural phenomena. After a troubling pattern of disappearances in and around the cavern, authorities began sending investigators into its depths. Some had successful expeditions, but in the end, those who sought to map the cave only joined the numbers of those it claimed. On the occasions that the explorers did return, they always described monsters and hazards of an indescribable nature. Which I always thought was kind of weird, because, if you're describing them as indescribable, then they've just been described. Wait, indescribable is a description in the first place, so the word just makes no sense. I'm getting off track. Among the oddities found within the caverns, one room in the cave proved especially confounding. Dubbed Medusa's Den, this room was found by investigator Mark Fischbach. No relation, but we're gonna use his picture. Please don't sue me. Upon returning from his first expedition, investigator Fischbach provided evidence of a massive cavern within the cave, containing what at first appeared to be limestone statues of people in incredible pain. The faces of the statues suggest that they're screaming in agony, like they were given birth to spiny sea urchins. Strangely enough, the statues were wearing cloth clothes as well, and had completed anatomy under them. The clothes that these statues were wearing were from various eras of history. Some looked like they were from the days of cavemen. Some looked like prospectors trying to strike it rich during the gold rush. Some looked like they went missing this week, right down to the fresh Heinz mustard stains on their quadruple XL Supreme shirts. There were also statues of small animals like rats, frogs, and scorpions. Even stranger, occasionally he noted statues of spiders as tall as his waist, one of a humanoid creature that definitely wasn't stolen directly from the descent, even one of some sort of giant predatory land cephalopod. I really like what you've done with the place, Mommy Cave. He returned from the cave on his first expedition with no struggle or fear. However, he looked notably paler than when he went in, but it wasn't like he had seen a ghost. He relayed all information very matter-of-factly, and did not resist at all when Lucicorp assigned him to return to the cave the next day. This wasn't the classic psychological reaction of blood draining from someone's face due to fear. Upon shaking a Lucicorp executive's hand, they stated that it was almost like the texture and hue of the skin was changing. It was gray and hard. It felt like dusty sandpaper. The next day, Fischbach undertook his second expedition. The first time he went in, he said that it took him at least an hour of exploring deep within the cave before he came across the room. The second time, he said he found it almost immediately, and to his surprise, it was far closer to the surface than the first time. Not only this, but the room appeared much larger. There were many more statues, and they were arranged in a circle, all pointed towards a central locus. Fischbach noted that among the statues, many of them resembled the tourist that had recently gone missing. He came and went from the cave with no issue. Even though he reported being inside for only a few hours, he left for the expedition at the crack of dawn and returned at midnight. The second time Fischbach returned, his epidermis looked more similar to the skin of an elephant than that of a man. It was dry, hard, and flaky, and it audibly shifted and cracked as he moved. Fischbach had not noticed this until informed of his condition by those he was debriefing. Upon becoming aware of his state, he panicked and begged the Lucicorp executives to seek out the source of a potential cure. Originally, both Fischbach and representatives of Lucicorp agreed that this was clearly emblematic of the Greek myth of Medusa, hence the name they chose for the cavern. Samples taken from Fischbach's rapidly changing skin revealed a different cause for this anomalous disease. It appears that this affliction is caused by a newly discovered species of fungus native to the Devil's Hole, hereby dubbed Gorgon spores. These spores cause the calcification of biological material when in contact with a living animal. Translation, they turn meaty bits into rocks. When touched, eaten, or inhaled, these spores will bind to organs and tissues and calcify them into limestone. You're probably wondering, what's the fucking point of turning people into rocks? Just for funsies? Well, it's not just for funsies. It's actually integral in how these Gorgon spores feed. You see, these spores are an extremophile species of fungus that feeds on limestone deposits within the cave. However, just like Hansel and Gretel learned, if you eat your house, the maintenance costs are gonna be crazy, and that's why you gotta stick more candy all over the walls. And by candy, I mean dead people turn into rocks. Hence why these spores convert animals into limestone. It's 'cause they're hungry. Through a heretofore unknown process, the Gorgon spores first calcify their victims, and then use a specialized acid to dissolve the calcified rock, allowing metals and inorganic ions present in the newly formed stone to be used as the fungus's energy source. Nature is just so beautiful sometimes. I mean,
Not right now. This makes me want to light a hornet's nest on fire and throw it in a school, but I don't know, man. Eat a random mushroom from the forest.
It's thought that the Gorgon spores are at least partially the reason that the cave can shift and morph so fluidly, as the constant influx of new limestone from this cavern could be used to restructure the cave, as the fungus constantly breaks it down and feeds on it. I got that last part from the Lucicorp files that I didn't steal, but for once the humans look like they're onto something, so credit where credit is due. Evidently, the spores are not limited to Medusa's den, but can travel with any host that's been infected. Fishbach continued to calcify even when he was kept on the surface, showing evidence that the cave spores will continue to feed off of their prey, even when outside of their native environment. He begged to be sent back into the cave in search of a cure, and Lucicorp readily agreed to send him back next morning. Upon daybreak, Investigator Fishbach had become completely calcified, his face stricken with the same excruciating expression as those claimed by Medusa's den. Lucicorp has gone on record stating that it intends to use his body to explain the natural process of how the Gorgon spores fucking eat people to fat tourists. They're quoted on record as saying, "Investigator Fishbach's sacrifice will not be in vain, as his remains will educate those who will inevitably come from every corner of the earth to experience the majesty of the Devil's Hole anomalies." It's impossible to completely understand the cave with the information found thus far, so if you want me to come back and examine more of the Devil's Holes, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe with all notifications enabled, or I'll throw you into a cave! I want to shout out Dead Rex for drawing these spooky man monsters. Shout out the Inner Circle. Love y'all.